People often say that betrayal comes from enemies. They are wrong. The deepest wounds are always inflicted by the people you love the most. My name is Roman Walker, and this is the story of how I lost everything because I refused to believe the only person who truly cared about me, my wife. I was raised by my mother, Margaret Walker, after my father passed away when I was 16 years old. Life was difficult, but my mother worked tirelessly to provide for me and my younger sister, Olivia. She always reminded me, family is everything, Roman. No matter what happens, never turn your back on your family. Those words became the foundation of my life. As I grew older, I worked hard to build a successful construction company. Years of dedication and sacrifice paid off. My business flourished, and I was able to buy a beautiful home, support my family, and give my mother and sister a comfortable life. Then I met the woman who changed my world. Her name was Emma. Emma wasn't impressed by my wealth or my business. She loved me for who I was. She was kind, intelligent, respectful, and believed that honesty was the strongest foundation for any marriage. After 2 wonderful years together, we got married. For the first few weeks, everything seemed perfect. Or so I believed. Soon after the wedding, my mother began criticizing Emma over the smallest things. The soup is too salty. You don't know how to keep a proper home. My son deserves someone better. Whenever I was around, however, Margaret became sweet and caring, praising Emma as if she were the perfect daughter-in-law. My sister Olivia behaved the same way. She smiled warmly whenever I entered the room, but the moment I left, her smile disappeared. "You'll never belong in this family," Olivia whispered to Emma one afternoon while I was at work. "You only married my brother because of his money." Emma never answered back. She simply remained silent. Every evening, she greeted me with a gentle smile, hiding the pain she had endured throughout the day. One night, after dinner, Emma finally gathered the courage to speak. "Roman, can we talk?" I smiled. "Of course." She hesitated before saying, "Your mother and Olivia don't treat me kindly when you're not home." I frowned. "What do you mean?" "They insult me, they constantly criticize me, and they make me feel like I don't belong here." Without thinking, I shook my head. "Emma, you must have misunderstood them." She looked at me in disbelief. "You don't believe me? My mother sacrificed everything to raise me. She would never intentionally hurt anyone." Emma lowered her eyes. "I understand." From that day forward, the same conversation happened again and again. Every time Emma tried to explain what was happening, I defended my mother and sister. They loved me. They would never lie. "You're reading too much into it." Eventually, Emma stopped arguing. Instead, she quietly observed everything. She noticed that my mother constantly asked questions about my business. How much money did the company make? Which bank held my accounts? How much credit was available? Where were my important documents kept? At first, I thought she was simply interested. Emma disagreed. One afternoon, Emma walked into my home office and found Olivia searching through one of my filing cabinets. "What are you doing?" Emma asked. Olivia quickly closed the drawer. "Nothing. You were looking through Roman's financial documents." Olivia crossed her arms. "Mind your own business." That evening, Emma told me what had happened. I laughed. Maybe she was just curious. Emma stared at me. "Roman, why would anyone be curious about your bank records?" I had no answer. Still, I chose to trust my sister. Weeks turned into months. My mother became even more involved in my finances. She insisted on helping organize my paperwork. She volunteered to collect important mail while I was busy. She even asked for copies of my identification and business documents, just in case of emergencies. Emma grew increasingly worried. "This isn't normal," she said one evening. "They don't need copies of your personal documents. They don't need to know every detail about your business. I smiled and held her hand. You worry too much. She squeezed my hand tightly. No, Roman. Her voice trembled. I'm afraid your trust will be used against you. I kissed her forehead. Nothing like that will ever happen. She forced a small smile, but the fear in her eyes remained. Neither of us noticed that upstairs, Margaret and Olivia were standing quietly outside the bedroom door. Margaret held a folder filled with copies of Roman's financial documents, identification papers, and business records. Olivia looked at her mother with a satisfied smile. We have almost everything we need. Margaret nodded slowly. Very soon. Roman will sign his own downfall without even realizing it. Downstairs, Emma stood by the window, watching the rain fall. A strange feeling settled deep in her heart. She couldn't explain it. But she knew something terrible was coming. She just prayed she wasn't too late to stop it. The following weeks were the busiest of my life. My construction company had won one of the biggest contracts we had ever received. I left home before sunrise and often returned late at night. I trusted my family completely, believing everything at home was under control. Emma, however, couldn't shake the feeling that something was wrong. She noticed my mother, Margaret, making frequent phone calls behind closed doors. Whenever Emma entered the room, the conversation stopped immediately. Olivia also started leaving the house almost every afternoon, always carrying a thick folder. Where are you going so often? Emma asked one day. Olivia smiled sarcastically. Why? Do I need your permission now? Emma didn't answer. Instead, she quietly watched as Olivia got into a taxi and drove away. That evening, Emma tried once again to warn me. Roman, please listen to me. I looked up from my laptop. What happened now? I think your mother and Olivia are hiding something. I sighed. Emma. I'm serious. They've been acting strangely for weeks. They're collecting your documents, making secret phone calls, and leaving the house with files. I closed my laptop. Emma, you're imagining things. She looked disappointed. I hope I am. A few days later, Margaret approached me with a warm smile. Roman, dear, I need one small favor. Of course, Mom. I'm updating some family records. Could you sign these papers? Without reading them, I signed every page. Emma walked into the room just as I finished. What papers are those? She asked. Margaret answered before I could. Oh, nothing important. Just family documents. Emma picked up one page, but Margaret quickly took it back. They're private. After Margaret left, Emma looked at me. You signed those without reading them? I shrugged. It's my mother. Emma took a deep breath. Roman, never sign documents unless you know exactly what they are. I smiled. You worry too much. She didn't argue anymore. Deep inside, she knew I wouldn't listen. Unknown to me, Margaret and Olivia met a man named Victor the following morning. Victor worked as a dishonest financial consultant who specialized in helping people obtain loans through fraudulent paperwork. Margaret placed my signed documents on his desk. Is everything ready? She asked. Victor examined the papers and smiled. Better than ready. Olivia leaned forward. When will the money arrive? Within a few weeks. And Roman? Victor laughed. He won't know anything until the bank starts asking for payments. The three of them smiled. They believed their plan was perfect. Meanwhile, Emma continued searching for answers. One afternoon, while cleaning the living room, she found an envelope hidden beneath the sofa. Inside was a receipt from a law office. The document mentioned my name. Emma immediately became nervous. She called the office. I'm sorry, the receptionist said politely, but we can't discuss a client's confidential paperwork. What kind of paperwork? Emma asked. I'm afraid I can't say. The call ended. Emma's heart raced. That night she showed me the receipt. Roman, please explain this. I looked at it. I've never been to that office. Then why is your name on this document? I don't know. Emma looked directly into my eyes. Someone is using your identity. I laughed nervously. That's impossible. She slowly folded the receipt. I hope you're right. Days later, the impossible happened. Margaret invited several relatives to our home for dinner. Throughout the evening, she praised me in front of everyone. My son is so successful. He takes wonderful care of us. I couldn't ask for a better son. Everyone smiled. Emma remained silent. She noticed Margaret constantly exchanging secret glances with Olivia. Something about their smiles didn't feel genuine. Late that night, after everyone had gone to bed, Emma walked downstairs for a glass of water. As she passed my mother's bedroom, she heard whispering. She stopped. The $5 million. Emma froze. Olivia whispered excitedly. The bank approved everything. Margaret chuckled softly. Roman won't suspect a thing. And when the money arrives, we'll transfer it before anyone notices. Emma's heart pounded. $5 million. The bank? Roman? She carefully stepped closer. Suddenly, the floor creaked beneath her feet. The voices stopped. The bedroom door opened. Margaret stood there, staring directly at Emma. What are you doing outside my room? She asked coldly. Emma forced a smile. I was getting water. Margaret continued staring for several seconds before finally closing the door. Emma hurried back upstairs. She barely slept that night. The next morning, she told me everything she had heard. Roman, I heard your mother talking about $5 million and a bank. I rubbed my forehead. Emma. Please believe me this time. I'm sure there's an explanation. There always is, she replied sadly. But somehow, I'm always the only one looking for it. For the first time since our marriage, Emma walked away from the conversation before I could answer. She realized that no matter how many warnings she gave me, I would always choose to believe my mother over my wife. As she stood alone in the garden, she made a quiet promise to herself. If Roman won't protect himself, then I will. She had no idea that the biggest betrayal was only days away. Far across the city, a bank officer approved a $5 million loan. Every document carried my name. Every signature appeared to be mine. And the debt, legally belonged to Roman Walker. 3 days passed after Emma overheard my mother and Olivia talking about $5 million. Life seemed normal. I went to work every morning, attended meetings, signed contracts, and planned new projects for my construction company. I had no idea that my life was about to change forever. On Monday morning, my assistant knocked on my office door. Mr. Walker, there's an urgent courier package for you. Bring it in. She placed a large envelope on my desk. Across the front were the words. Final notice. I frowned. I don't remember expecting anything. I opened the envelope. As I read the first page, the color drained from my face. Outstanding loan balance, $5 million. My hands began to shake. There has to be some mistake. I turned the page. The loan was listed under my name. Roman Walker. My home address. My company information. Everything matched. I immediately called the number on the notice. There must be a mistake, I said. I've never taken a $5 million loan. The representative replied calmly. Mr. Walker, according to our records, the loan was approved several weeks ago. We have signed documentation connected to your account. I never applied for it. I'm sorry, sir. If you believe fraud has occurred, you'll need to file a formal dispute. But until the matter is resolved, the account remains in your name. I hung up the phone. My heart was racing. I drove home as fast as I could. Emma was in the kitchen when I walked in. The moment she saw my face, she knew something was terribly wrong. What happened? Without saying a word, I handed her the notice. She read it silently. When she looked up, there were tears in her eyes. I tried to warn you. For the first time since our marriage. I had no answer. That evening, I gathered my mother and Olivia in the living room. Holding the letter in my hand, I asked, "Do either of you know anything about this?" Margaret looked surprised. "Alone?" Olivia shook her head. "What are you talking about? They say I borrowed $5 million. Margaret gasped dramatically. "Oh my goodness. Someone must have stolen your identity." Olivia quickly added, "You should hire a lawyer." Emma watched them carefully. Their words sounded convincing. But their expressions told a different story. Neither woman looked shocked. Neither asked to see the documents. It was almost as if they already knew. Later that night, Emma quietly spoke to me. "Did you notice something?" "What?" "Your mother wasn't surprised." I remained silent. And Olivia never even asked how much money was involved. For the first time, I started thinking about everything Emma had been telling me for months. The copied documents. The secret meetings. The whispered conversations. The mysterious papers I had signed without reading. A feeling of guilt settled over me. Had I been wrong all along? The next morning, I met with my lawyer. After reviewing the documents, he looked at me seriously. "Roman, this is a complicated situation. I never borrowed this money. I believe you. But proving it may take time. Can they take my business? If the matter isn't resolved, your assets could be at risk." My stomach tightened. Everything I had worked for could disappear. When I returned to the office, several suppliers had already heard rumors about financial trouble. One by one, they began delaying shipments. Some clients postponed contracts. Within a week, my reputation started falling apart. At home, Margaret pretended to comfort me. "Don't worry, son. Everything will work out." Olivia nodded. "We're here for you." Emma said nothing. She simply watched them. That evening, while cleaning the guest room, Emma noticed a small metal key on the floor. She recognized it immediately. It belonged to the locked drawer in Margaret's bedroom. Margaret had accidentally dropped it earlier that day. Emma picked it up. She wasn't planning to invade anyone's privacy. But she also knew that my entire future was hanging by a thread. The next afternoon, while Margaret and Olivia were out shopping, Emma stood outside Margaret's room. Her heart pounded. She unlocked the drawer. Inside were folders filled with copies of my personal documents, old financial records, and papers connected to the loan. Emma quickly used her phone to photograph every page. One document caught her attention. It showed large transfers from the loan into accounts that did not belong to me. Emma's hands trembled. This was the proof she had been searching for. She carefully returned everything exactly as she had found it, locked the drawer, and left the room. That evening, she waited for me to come home. "Roman," she said quietly, "I have something to show you." She handed me her phone. As I looked through the photographs, my entire body froze. There, among the papers, were documents connected to the loan that had been hidden inside my mother's locked drawer. I could barely breathe. Tears filled my eyes. I accused you of imagining things." Emma gently held my hand. "I wasn't trying to prove you wrong. I was trying to protect you." I broke down. For months, I had ignored every warning. I had trusted the wrong people. And the woman who loved me most had been standing alone. That night, I looked Emma in the eyes and whispered the hardest words I had ever spoken. "I'm sorry." Emma smiled through her tears. "It's not too late." I nodded slowly. "No. It's time we stop being victims. For the first time. We're going to fight back." For the first time since our marriage, Emma and I stood on the same side of the battle. The next morning, we met with my lawyer before sunrise. Emma showed him every photograph she had taken from the documents hidden in Margaret's locked drawer. The lawyer studied each image carefully. When he finished, he looked at us and said, "This is important evidence, but we must let the authorities investigate. Don't confront your mother or sister yet." I nodded. This time, I listened. A formal fraud complaint was filed, and investigators began reviewing the loan records, financial documents, and bank transactions. Over the next few weeks, Emma and I cooperated with every request. We handed over emails, business records, and anything that could help prove I had never benefited from the loan. Meanwhile, Margaret and Olivia acted as though nothing had happened. Margaret still made breakfast every morning. Olivia still smiled whenever I entered the room. But now I could see through their act. Every smile felt fake. Every kind word sounded hollow. One evening, Margaret sat beside me. "Roman, have you made any progress with the bank?" I looked at her calmly. "The investigators are reviewing everything." For the first time, I noticed fear flash across her face. It disappeared within seconds. "I'm sure they'll realize you've done nothing wrong," she replied. "I hope so," I answered. She didn't know that the investigation was getting closer to the truth every day. A few days later, my lawyer called. "Roman, we've received encouraging news." "What happened?" "The investigators found financial records showing that the loan money was transferred into accounts connected to your mother and sister, not to you." I closed my eyes. Even though I had begun to suspect the truth, hearing it confirmed was heartbreaking. The two people I had trusted all my life had betrayed me. Emma gently placed her hand on my shoulder. "We'll get through this." I squeezed her hand. "I should have trusted you from the beginning." She smiled softly. "The important thing is that you're trusting me now." Soon afterward, the authorities questioned Margaret and Olivia. At first, both denied everything. Margaret insisted, "I've only ever tried to help my son." Olivia claimed, "We don't know anything about that loan." But as investigators compared documents, financial records, and witness statements, their stories began to fall apart. The evidence was overwhelming. Finally, the case went before a judge. The courtroom was silent as the evidence was presented. The investigators explained how the loan proceeds had been traced. My lawyer demonstrated that I had never received the money and had reported the fraud as soon as I discovered it. Margaret and Olivia struggled to explain the evidence against them. When the judge asked direct questions, they gave conflicting answers. By the end of the hearing, it was clear that the truth had come to light. The court ruled that I had been the victim of fraud. The loan responsibility was removed from my name, and the people responsible were held legally accountable for their actions. As we walked out of the courthouse, reporters gathered outside. I ignored every camera. The only person I wanted to face was Emma. I stopped in front of her. With tears in my eyes, I said, "You stood beside me when I refused to stand beside you." Emma smiled gently. "Marriage isn't about being right, Roman. It's about standing together, especially when life falls apart." I couldn't hold back my emotions. "I'm sorry for every time I doubted you." She hugged me tightly. "I forgave you a long time ago." A few weeks later, I sold the house that had been filled with painful memories. Emma and I bought a smaller home in a quiet neighborhood. It wasn't as grand as the old one, but it felt peaceful. For the first time in years, our home was free from manipulation, lies, and constant tension. My business slowly recovered. Many clients returned after learning that I had been cleared of any wrongdoing. The experience changed me forever. I learned that love is built on trust, not blind loyalty. I learned that respect must be earned, even within a family. And most importantly, I learned that the person who warns you out of love deserves to be heard. As Emma and I sat on the porch of our new home one evening, watching the sunset, I held her hand. "Thank you," I whispered. She looked at me and smiled. "What for?" "For saving my life, even when I didn't believe you." She rested her head on my shoulder. "We have a new beginning now." I smiled. "Yes. And this time, we'll build it together." 6 months had passed since the court cleared my name. Life wasn't magically perfect overnight, but for the first time in a long while, it was peaceful. Every morning, I woke up without the fear of another threatening letter or another lie waiting around the corner. My construction company slowly recovered. Clients who had once stepped away returned after learning the truth. Several of them admitted they had always believed I was an honest businessman but had waited until the legal case was resolved. I was grateful, not just because my business was growing again, but because I had been given a second chance. And this time, I wasn't going to waste it. Emma stood beside me through every meeting, every difficult decision, and every setback. Although she wasn't an employee of the company, her advice became invaluable. She helped organize our finances, encouraged me to read every document before signing it, and reminded me that trust should never replace careful judgment. One evening, as we reviewed paperwork in my office, I smiled and laughed. Emma looked up. "What?" I held up a contract. "Can you believe I actually read every single page?" She laughed. "I never thought I'd see the day." I grinned. "You changed me." She shook her head. "No, Roman. You changed yourself. You simply decided to listen." Those words stayed with me. Looking back, I realized that revenge wasn't about making someone suffer. Real revenge was refusing to let their betrayal destroy the life we were building. Months later, our company celebrated its best financial year since the crisis. My employees surprised me with a small celebration. One of them raised a glass. "To Roman." Another added. "And to Emma, the woman who never gave up on him." Everyone applauded. I looked at Emma. She blushed and smiled. At that moment, I knew none of this would have been possible without her. A few weeks later, we visited a local community center that helped victims of financial fraud. Listening to other families share their stories reminded me how fortunate we were to have found the truth before it was too late. After my talk, a young man approached me. "Mr. Walker, how did you survive something like this?" I thought for a moment before answering. I stopped pretending that love means ignoring warning signs. He nodded thoughtfully. "And I learned that the person who truly loves you will sometimes tell you things you don't want to hear." Emma smiled proudly. That evening, as we drove home, she reached for my hand. "I'm proud of you." I squeezed her hand gently. "I'm proud of us." A year after the nightmare began, we celebrated our wedding anniversary. Instead of an expensive vacation or a luxury dinner, we returned to the small park where I had proposed to Emma years earlier. The park looked almost the same. The old oak tree still stood in the center. Children laughed nearby. Birds sang from the branches. I knelt down in front of Emma once again. She laughed. "Roman, what are you doing?" I took out a small ring box. "This isn't because we need another wedding." She smiled through happy tears. "It's because I want to promise you something." I opened the box. Inside was a simple silver ring. "I promise that from this day forward, I will never ignore your voice again. I promise to respect you. I promise to trust you. And I promise that no one, not even family, will ever come between us again." Emma wiped away her tears. "I don't need expensive gifts. I only ever wanted your trust." I slipped the ring onto her finger. She hugged me tightly. As the sun began to set, I looked at the woman who had saved me from the biggest mistake of my life. I realized something important. My mother and sister had tried to take away my money. They had tried to destroy my business. They had tried to ruin my future. But in the end, they failed. Because they could never steal the one thing that truly mattered.